Well, thanks for that introduction. I'm supposed to ask you challenging questions.
Okay, well, here we go. The light is fantastic, by the way.
All right, let's rewind. I met you for the very first time 5 years ago in Amsterdam.
Exactly. Yeah.
I had just left Expedia, and people were thinking I was a secret spy, still working for Expedia. And you had just left Google?
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
Before that, Microsoft?
Yeah.
All right, let's rewind. Is Booking.com a technology company or a travel company?
Oh, that's a good one. It's also a discussion we have internally quite some time. I think the best way to put it is probably we are a technology company within travel.
Okay.
I don't think you can compare it like the likes of Google or Microsoft. I think, but there is a component of technology in it. We try to make it easier for everyone to experience the world. We want to take the friction out of travel, and we do that by using technology. But there's also a lot of operational work, what needs to happen in order to make it work for guests, for partners. Partners in this case are accommodations for us. So, yeah, it's not only the technology, but it's of course one of the driving components of what we do.
And on a more personal level, and you're in charge of connectivity and APIs, maybe walk us through what your role covers at Booking.com.
Yeah, so the team I'm looking after is actually just what we call connectivity partnerships, and that actually just goes from what originally started with the channel managers when I joined 5 years ago. Now just goes beyond channel management and distribution. We also tap into PMSs, revenue managers, review managers, content providers. So the scope is actually just getting bigger. At the same time, that also just brings more complexity. Because how are we really going to help to build that integration, right? It's great to have a team that builds all these APIs. We have a wide portfolio of APIs which everyone can use to tap into our platform. At the same time, not everything is used probably in the way it should be or it was intended to be. And we are actually building out a professional services arm right now just to help our technology providers like yourself and many others to make sure that what the API integration actually should do also does towards, let's say, the accommodation. I think that is the part where we need to step into. I'm always using in lots of presentations also to kind of showcase where we are. There is this beautiful visual from CG, also one of the sponsors of HEDNA, that actually just put the accommodation in the center, and then if you look around all the players that are between the accommodation and the ultimate guest that comes to that place, it's a tremendous ecosystem. It's so big. Let's say that also shows a little bit, let's say, if everyone in the room also puts always themselves in the middle instead of the customer, in this case the accommodation or ultimately the guest, then it's becoming very difficult to kind of get things integrated in the right way, use it in the right way. So we have to probably be a little bit more agnostic and just put ourselves in the shoes of a accommodation, say what are they doing? And we all know they're great at hospitality, getting guests in, serving them in the right way, but they're most likely not always, maybe not compared to Citizen M, but they are not a technology company. So how can we make it easier for them to do what they need to do on a daily basis?
What are some of the challenges? I mean, we just heard the PMS players talking about open APIs, and it sounded simple. Your APIs are well documented, they're available to everyone to view, yet you're adding a team to help technology providers leverage and use them. We're all nerds in this audience. We think we know tech a little bit. So walk us through, what are the most common challenges that these tech providers experience from your point of view?
Well, we talk about, and that's also part of my role, connectivity, just making systems connect to each other. But there is a wide variety of systems out there, right? So we are currently working with around 600-700 connectivity providers. We estimate that there are around 2,000 PMSs in the world. And that's from the new cloud-based, like the ones we have been here on stage before, but also the off-premise or on-premise systems that still are being used. to get that all integrated, I think the challenge sits in the fact that we are all using different standards and everyone comes up with their own standard. I can still recall the time that, and we still have it by the way, is that we had next to the OTA standard in certain APIs also BXML, booking XML. That was because it served a certain purpose for us that didn't do anything for anyone else. Is that a standard? Well, probably not, but for us it was important. I think that if you really want to kind of get things working better together, it's time that also the industry starts to kind of think about, let's say, are there certain API standards for certain processes that are similar everywhere? Onboarding, setting up a room, setting up a rate. That can make life much easier in, let's say, how we all kind of look into this. If you also look into the database or the attributes, we talked about attributes-based selling, everyone is using it differently. So if everyone continues to use it differently, how do you ultimately bring it together? And I think that's the challenge we are, I think, facing as an industry, which I think we should just start to solve together. And it also starts with booking, right? So we cannot continue with BXML in this sense, but just figuring out, let's say, what are the standards in the market and how can we make that work for each other?
Okay. We started with 5 years ago. What in the last 5 years has been your biggest success, personal success at Booking.com?
I think I would say that when I joined, I actually just came in the industry. I had chats with lots of providers. And the main thing I saw, and also how we were managing it, it was mainly, I call it the plumbing, the back-end work. The systems work, the integration was there, but that's it. So we looked into retrieval time, download speed, those type of things, the success rates, API errors, those type of things. Mm-hmm. And actually we thought there was more possible in this, with these providers in order to kind of get them also to help properties in helping to perform better. Let's say if you build software that does distribution, you can build the software and say, well, the software takes care of everything. The question is if that's the case, because we all know how complicated it is with all the different OTAs, which all have different setups. The provider knows, probably better than anyone else, how to kind of get that done. So we actually started to kind of move from the technical background partnerships we had to a much more business-oriented partnership. And I still recall that I think it was in 2017 or so that we had our partner event in Amsterdam. And we were actually just talking about this to everyone, saying, well, this is what we want to do. This is the role we see for providers. And it ended up in a very heated debate. That, let's say, this is not what we do. This is not how it's going to work, etc. And they were like, okay, yeah, it's good to kind of get that feedback and figure out how we can do this together, but I do believe this is the right thing to do. If I see where we are now and talking to, well, many of the providers that are also here, but also others, they actually just come now and say, hey, I know how complicated it was, and that you got a lot of pushback, but at the same time, it was probably the right thing to do. So we see also in the APIs we start to move much more out of the only traditional plumbing side, but also now to bring more business-oriented APIs to the market.
So you're saying it worked?
Well, to a certain extent. I say we're still not there, right? So there is, and I think that's also what I've heard over the last couple of days. The industry needs to change, and we have a lot of legacy, and that sits everywhere. And I think that the challenge is how do you kind of get out of that legacy. So if we focus, and it's always great to bring nice, shiny, new APIs to the market, right? I know everyone is asking for it, bring new functionality, can do new things. But actually, if the foundation is not right, you can build on top of it. Same with your house. If you have a clunky foundation, then you can just build next levels onto it, but at some point it will break. And we've put a lot of band-aids in place over the last couple of years everywhere, and not only us, I think everyone has done that. It's time to kind of also reset it a bit and focus on what can we actually do better in the current setup, because we are not utilizing it all. So as an example, we do see that accommodations that are working with providers still go to the extranet. I ask myself the question, why? Is it because the functionality in the channel manager is not good enough? Is it, can you not all do it there? Why do you need to go there? Are you not trusting it? So one of the examples we've heard is that reservations are being checked in the extranet. that's probably to me similar like if I send you an email, I'm never going to give you a call if you've received that email. I just trust it's in your inbox. You can wait to respond, let's say, but I trust it's there. In this case, for the reservations, people go in there to see if the reservation is really there. Like, why? So in that case, how can we build that trust? How can we make sure that it really works from that one single interface, or at least the interface that, or the software that a provider or property wants to use? And not having to kind of just mingle and use different systems all the time, because that's the complicated part. Every OTA has their own extranet, everything, every time we come up with beautiful new things. As a hotelier, how do you keep up with that? It's literally impossible. So, therefore, we believe that there's much more work we can do as a kind of baseline and build the foundation better to ensure that there is much more happening in the interface of the provider, so from your end, and that limits then the need to go to others. That doesn't mean you can't go there. Everyone has a choice, right? It's a free world. It's also free in terms of how you use your software. But I think this is where ultimately we need to get to. So we need to put better solutions in place, also in the integrations based on standards, towards the hoteliers to make their lives easier.
But from a Booking.com leadership perspective, they're looking at connectivity not for just plumbing purposes, to your point, success rates and ROI and transactional efficiencies. They really would like to see, I guess, business benefits be driven. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And these business benefits can be formulated in what? Better rate?
Better rates, better availability, helping with setting restrictions in the right way. We found during COVID that a lot of restrictions are being set in the past. And because of COVID, people had to look into it because there were shorter stays, there were the cancellations or the shorter book windows. Then you need to kind of just re-look into what you had. And we found that there are so many things set in stone. No one looks into it, doesn't know that it exists. But you have to rethink that. And that's, let's say, part of where we feel like providers can play a role in advising accommodations to kind of do that better, or just make the software so smart that actually the software is guiding you through that in the right way. So not as part of a specific tool that's a copy from what Booking has on the extranet or what Expedia has on the extranet, but it's something that is contextual in the environment that they're using.
If you're given the choice, PMS or channel manager, where do you think Booking.com should connect with?
I think it's hard to make a choice.
Okay.
Because I think it sits in both. The PMS in many cases holds the truth. It's the source of truth in terms of what you have available. But the distribution capabilities, that's also I think a specific a skill set that sits within a technology provider to do that. If you need to kind of understand how all these OTAs like Booking, Expedia, Trip, etc. work, and you need to kind of do that also in the PMS and integrate it, I think it's possible, but you have to kind of at some point need to make trade-offs. So there is still, from our perspective, a lot of room to grow in the distribution space to really get the maximum out of it, because we have not even showed that anywhere. So I think that's the opportunity which sits there, combining that with what the PMS can do in terms of making sure the truth is there, that the operation can be run smoothly, bringing that together. So we are not going to make a bet, we're actually just going to expand our efforts into the PMS, because there are quite a lot of functionality that do not sit well with the channel manager, but actually sit better within the PMS.
So you'd like to connect to both?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the future. Is metaverse a topic at Booking.com?
I think that the simple answer is no.
Okay.
Not at this stage. And of course, it triggered me yesterday to think a bit about it. But I think for us, it's relatively far off in terms of what we can do. It most likely for us will start with similar to how we kind of just now look into social media, and it's another way to kind of just at least bring exposure to a new group of potential customers that you want to just at least expose
As
to
a
your
sales
brand.
and marketing tool.
As a sales and marketing tool. But I'm not yet seeing myself, let's say, the example yesterday, putting the website down and then make it 3D, how that kind of might work for booking at this stage. But I do like the challenge of new technology that comes to the market.
So let's maybe take a step back, right? We've done a lot of work on APIs in the last 5 years, 10 years, bookings, rates and availability, etc. You're piloting guest communication, messaging. What's the next API?
Well, I think, as I said before, we have a roadmap of new things that come out, but actually our primary focus is to really make sure that the foundation gets better. And there is also on our end a lot to optimize and get better to also ensure that ultimately the accommodation is being served in the best possible way, to kind of just do the standardized things like room and rate management, setup of your rates, your pricing strategy in general. So that's where we put our efforts on.
Getting the basics right and building on top of that as a foundation.
Yeah, because I think I said you can do innovation, and of course we try to do innovation. There is also, well, the innovate we have here. There are really nice ideas. But let's say my personal challenge is a bit, let's say, how do you build it on top of a legacy that's not yet to the right level? It makes it even more complicated. So we have to start somewhere, and then I feel like from a booking point of view and the position we are in and with how many accommodations and technology providers we work, that we probably need to kind of take a step to kind of make that work.
Okay. We had a lot of data in the last 2 days. Marcus recently shared that Q3 is doing well. Your Q2 was fantastic. I mean, 100% growth, room nights exceeding 2019 levels, which is just staggering. What's your perspective on business outlook?
Yeah, well, I think just as a public trading company, I cannot expose how it's going to.
So no sneak peek into Q3?
No sneak peek in Q3, other than, let's say, what we have shared. July was already really good. And I actually just echo what was said earlier. I think the trends are positive, but there are still quite some, there's also some volatility in terms of we don't know what the war in Ukraine will bring. Is COVID coming back in winter? What's happening on that side? Inflation, are people really just saving money not to travel yet? I think those are the type of circumstances where we really look into, but also makes forecasting for, let's say, where we think it's going to be also quite hard. Because there are too many, well, let's say, unknowns, which make it difficult. At the same time, the trajectory is positive in terms of where we came from in Q2 and the early signs in Q3.
Excellent. Google recently made the news, I guess it's gift that they were restricting corporate travel. Is your team still traveling? Is Booking.com still traveling?
We're here.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I think that there is a slight difference between, even though it's nice to kind of make the comparison to Google, in a way we are partners, we're also competitors. I think that's publicly known. At the same time, Google has such a broad business, and whilst we have been really suffering also from COVID with layoffs, etc., in the tech, the original tech space, that was not the case. So that was actually growing because people work from home, so technology need to work. Now you see there are different factors coming in that actually, well, actually forces these companies to kind of think differently. We are just kind of now on the path to rebuild and working on the recovery, which goes really well. So therefore, we want to continue our path for what we're trying to build for the longer term, which is the connected trip, and making sure that it is indeed easier for everyone to experience and just get the information on your phone. If your flight delays, that the hotels know that you are later, that your taxi is informed, all those type of things. It's not only the booking, but it's also, let's say, what you can do within your stay, and how technology is actually helping everyone to, well, get comfort in what you need to do, and don't need to make the phone call yourself, or, well, worried that your flight's cancelled, that that's being taken care of. So I think those things are, for us, the longer term, which we are just heavily investing in.
Okay, excellent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking Eddy. Thank you very much for listening and sharing a few minutes with us. Thank you, Eddy.
Sebastian.